Hi everyone, Kim here in Northern California. Welcome to Olive City Homestead. In today's video, I want to talk to you about windstorms and the damage they can do in the garden. And I'm going to be going over some damage that was done to 3 of my plants recently, 2 of them today. Well, the damage was caused yesterday and I had to get out there and attend to them today. And the other one, it happened a few weeks ago, and it was only half due to wind and half due to me procrastinating about pruning them. So yeah, heavy plants, they don't do well when the wind comes. So we're going to be talking about purple tree kale, okra, and sprouting broccoli, but really it applies to any plants. If you've got a high wind situation, I'm not talking hurricane, just some really strong winds, and you don't have some of your plants secured, either because you procrastinated like I did in the case of my tree kale, or because you just didn't think they needed it. In the case of my sprouting broccoli, another plant next to it, a very large zucchini plant, actually blew over in the wind onto the sprouting broccoli, breaking off a large branch. So today's video, we're going to be talking about how I went out there and alleviated the damage from the windstorm and actually made some good come out of the damage that had been done. So let's go take a look outdoors. Isn't that a pretty okra blossom? So these 2 okra plants had blown over, and both of them have been struggling a little bit with aphids or something like that, I'm not sure. But I just released some ladybugs into them, so I think that they'll be okay. Just harvested a couple of nice okra from them. But all it took to fix the damage from them blowing over in the windstorm was putting some bamboo in and tying them up. And okra is a really sturdy plant. In fact, they usually grow like trees with big thick trunks. I've never had one fall over. And so, yeah, maybe because they've been weakened by the bugs, I'm not sure, but it was a pretty strong wind. So they're staked up now, and with the ladybugs applied, I think that they're probably going to do fine. Okra is a really resilient plant, so not too worried about them. So this is the sprouting broccoli plant I was talking about, and it's in a bed that is transitioning to fall plants. It still has cherry tomato plants that are coming back and sending out, new growth, and tomatoes all over it. Lots of blossoms and tomatoes around it, but also lots of old branches, and so I'm just trying to keep it going as long as possible. And I've got some okra and an old squash that needs to come out, and that was the problem on this side of the bed. Over here there was another squash, not as old, and it was doing better, and I was sprouting I was harvesting zucchini off of it just last week, but in the windstorm yesterday it blew over on top of the sprouting broccoli plant. So a big branch that was right here broke off. It was actually the tallest branch, and it broke off, and so probably I couldn't save it or do anything with it other than take the broccoli off it. But I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try to planting it somewhere else, because I have had success with other plants doing that, most usually the brassicas, the kales, and some cabbages. So I thought, it's not gonna hurt to try it, and it might work. So I'll show you where I put it. So now that branch is planted here next to a tomato and some marigolds and some pepper plants, and then I have a bunch of new things seeded to either side. And this may not work. Some plants do fine if you stick them straight in the ground. They'll re-root as long as you keep them well watered. And I don't know about sprouting broccoli. I've never tried it. It looks a little sad right now, and I'm gonna come out and harvest some of these sprouting broccolis off of it in case it just dies. I'll at least get that out of it. But I think if it had been next week, it would have a better chance, because next week we're going back down to cooler temperatures. We've been having high 80s and low 90s, and for us that's cool. But starting today, it's supposed to go up into the 100s again, and so that sprouting broccoli may or may not do well. It may just go kaput pretty quickly, but I'm going to keep it watered a couple times a day and we'll see what happens. But now for the kale. Well, it's getting hot out here already. It's 102 at the moment, and that is 20 degrees hotter than it was last week. And I'm a little bit winded because I just spent a few minutes pulling out a little bit more Bermuda grass. I've decided that by my October 1st garden tour, which is only a few days away, I'm going to get all of this out of here, which really will only take about 15 minutes. And I just need to get down there on my knees and do it. Meanwhile, this plant, as you'll see in the next clip, I tackled pruning it at first 2.5 weeks ago when the very first branch broke because I hadn't pruned it in a timely manner. It was so tall and heavy, it broke. And then yesterday, during the first half of the windstorm, when I came out, well, the windstorm's been going for 2 days, and it had a break midday yesterday, and when I came out, I found damage on the same plant because I had never gone back and finished pruning it. So that's what you're going to see next. And then I'm going to show you the clips that I just did this morning of what I did with all of the kale once I got it off the plant. So I sing the praises of purple tree kale regularly, and for good reason. I mean, this stuff is amazing. I've only had this for 1.5 years now, and it was a 3-inch cutting when I put it in February 2019. It is now easily over 5 feet. During the winter, it was about 7-8 feet tall. I cut it back in the spring. It bushed out. It looks a bit sparse right now compared to what it looks like in the winter for 2 reasons. 1, in the winter, it grows many more leaves. And 2, in the winter, in the weather that it prefers, it grows much larger leaves. So while these leaves are as big as my palm, except I can't spread it out with one hand. In the winter, these leaves get, easily triple that size. Double to quadruple, I'd say. Most of them easily triple. And they get a little sweeter in the winter, but they're still delicious, even in the summer. So this is perennial in the warmer zones. And if I lived in a colder zone, if I ever moved, I would definitely take these into a greenhouse or my garage in the winter because they're that good and such a wonderful source of food all year round, but especially in the winter. So this morning, though, when I came out, to the garden, I noticed what I thought was something pretty sad, pretty horrible. Let me show you. Uh-oh, see that? There was a branch broken. It was still, of course, attached. This was the bottom of that branch, and I had to cut it off. It was just so heavy. It had leaned out about at this angle, and what I should have done was propped it up, staked it up, supported it, and thinned the many branches that were coming out of it, but I didn't. I knew I needed to, and I procrastinated, and that's what I get. Anyway, I will show you what I did, though, to make, you know, a silver lining on that little cloud, to make some good come out of that, other than now I know I need to come in here and do a little propping, supporting, and thinning. Let's go see what I did. So I ended up with 4 cuttings, very thick ones really, especially one of them, from that one stalk that broke off. I took off a lot of leaves, which I'm going to go cook with some scrambled eggs for my ducks this morning. But I really should take off more leaves than this because there's no way they're going to be able to support those leaves with no roots. It's hard to do, but I am. I'm going to take off more leaves, so there's just a couple of leaves on the top of each one of these cuttings. If even one of these makes it, I'll be happy, but I'd be even more happy if more than one makes it. But, you know, we'll see. It might. You never know. Kale and collards both root so easily that it may just work, and we can make something good come out of that break. And as well as, you know, the other good, which was me learning the lesson not to let a heavy side branch go. You can't procrastinate. I knew that needed cutting off quite a while ago, or at least thinning, and then it wouldn't have broken. Look what else I found buried in the dirt when I was putting these cuttings in. I found a hidden onion. The other 2 are so small they almost look like leeks, but whatever. They're going to cook up nice with my with my, where did I put, oh, I already took them in, my kale cuttings and, you know, the leaves I took off the top, and my duck eggs. It'll be a nice little breakfast. Well, I was waiting to do a final segment to this video until my cuttings had taken off, or not, one way or the other, so I could show you guys the result. And a couple of weeks have gone by, I think 2.5, and yesterday we had a big windstorm, and we do get some pretty high winds around here. And when I came out to the garden this morning to water, lo and behold, I found another broken purple tree kale stalk off my plant. So I know I said I was gonna prune it, and I did a little, but obviously not enough. And so I'm gonna have to go hardcore on this today. I am going to, because that was the original break right there. Today what I found was a break right there. So right there, that is the central stalk going up pretty straight. And what I'm gonna do is take off a lot of the outer branches, the thick ones like this one, and that one, and the couple of thinner ones that have come out and encroached on where I'm hacking out that star jasmine pathway there, and even onto these steps. I've been working on pulling out the Bermuda grass. Here's a bunch of dead stuff that I took from around this purple tree kale that is doing just fine. This one's had absolutely no breakage. Doesn't it look beautiful? And this is after a summer. Oh my gosh, the summer has been crazy. We had that 6-week heat wave, 110 to 115 every day. Then we had the fires to our southeast and to our northwest and southwest that raged for 3 weeks. And then we had, you know, days of absolutely no sun, just dark red skies. And then we had 3 weeks of smoke skies that, you know, they weren't that bad, but our temperatures went down 30 to 35 degrees during that time, and the air was full of smoke. The plants were covered in ash, and yet this one survived just fine. There is one outcropping there. I need to get that off, and I might take off this, you know, I need to pull this up, not restake it, but it has leaned. It was perfectly straight, so the wind has taken it over. I need to tie that up straight again, and then I'll decide what I need to prune off of this one. But this one's much taller and healthier and hasn't had any breakage yet, and I want to keep it that way. So, you know, I'll just act preventatively. I said that before, but I really mean it now, because this one's now half the size. Now, I'm not worried about that because I saw what happened last winter. Last winter, it shot up from a 3-4 inch plant to 7-8 feet tall, so I know it'll do that again. But I need to get these outlying branches off and just keep the central stalk. And so what I'm going to do now is take this beautiful kale, and I guess I'm having kale for dinner. That's a good thing, actually. It's so delicious. And I create a lot of cuttings here. So here are some of the purple tree kale cuttings. I know they look kind of droopy. That is how they look for several days, if not a week or more. But then the ones that take root actually perk up. Sometimes some of the leaves die, but they grow new leaves. And so I'm sure at least some of them will take, and that's all you need is a few. And here are the rest of them, because you didn't think that was all, did you? Some of these are just stems and they probably won't grow, but I have had luck with that once or twice, so why not try? Some are large and thick stems, some are smaller and thin, and so we'll see what happens. But hopefully I get some nice purple tree kale out of this, not just for myself, but also to give away. So I thought I would show you just how much kale I got off of those cuttings I did. In actuality, this is about half of the kale I got, because I also gave about this much again to the ducks and chickens, and they really appreciated it. So I'm going to now quickly blanch this. It's just 2 minutes in boiling water. And then I'm going to freeze all this kale for the winter. Doesn't it look pretty? And it's so good in stir fries or in stews. Okay, so I want to do this quick so I can get these right back in the freezer. But this is what I ended up with. 7 quarts and 1 gallon of frozen kale. And what I did after blanching them for 2.5 minutes in boiling water, I took them out and I put them on racks and patted them dry. And then I left them on the pans and racks, and I froze them that way for about 30 minutes. And then I took them out and I put them in the bags, and they're actually individually frozen. Each leaf is an individual frozen morsel, and that's why I'm going to get them put right back in the freezer right now, so they stay that way, so that when I want to use them this winter, when I take them out, they won't come out in mass in one big glugging chunk. They'll come out individually. Now, of course, the purple tree kale is perennial, and it produces even more in the winter. Huge leaves, sweet leaves, tons of leaves. So I have it available fresh all year, especially in the winter. However, having this frozen means that on a really rainy day, a really freezing cold day that I don't want to go outside and harvest fresh, I have the option of just pulling some out of the freezer. And I could give some away. That would be nice. Okay, and this is what the plant looks like now. Still plenty on there, and when winter hits, or actually even just the cool temperatures in November hit, this thing's gonna bulk out and shoot up like crazy. I know from last year. But you can see where I cut lots of branches, and actually you've already seen those branches and how much kale I got off of them. So now it's at a much more doable level here. So it's quite thin. I did prune out the ones that were coming over and blocking the pathway here. And I've left some nice growth. And like I said, it's gonna come up nicely in the cool weather. And I just did pull out some Bermuda grass from right around it. I restaked it so it's nice and firm. And I actually restaked this one too, because as I mentioned, this one had leaned in the windstorm, and now it's pretty straight up again, the main stalk. I also pruned some branches off of it so that it doesn't break like the other one. So it's looking really good now. Side by side, no longer are these two the same height. Actually, that one's quite a bit shorter, but I'm telling you, and if you come back and watch this, probably the December or January tour, these are both going to be the same size. And they're both, because I'm not going to let that one get past 7 or 8 feet. And this one will shoot up that tall. And they'll both fill out, and the leaves will get huge. That's what they do in the winter. They get just huge, as well as sweeter. So it will be fine. And now I've learned my lesson that as strong as those thick branches look as they get really thick, because some of the branches I took off were thicker than this. They look really strong, but actually what they are is really heavy. And so you just got to keep them under control. But I'm really pleased now with how they both look, as well as their sister or brother, whatever you want to call it, the third one that I started along with them last February. It was growing in the shade in a different spot of the property in the olive orchard, and it was totally being eaten by squirrels or mice, I don't know what, but it didn't like the shade. So I transplanted it a while back in one of my previous videos, and I pruned it way back when I transplanted it, and it has successfully rooted and is now looking great. And it's in line with that one on the left up there, and I guarantee this one also will fill out and look great this winter. So I try not to do too many videos in the middle of the day because it's so hot. It doesn't feel good or look good, and I have to squint so much. I have a million wrinkles around my eyes, but you know, that's what happens when you get older. All of your laugh lines come out, especially when you're squinting in the sun. But you know what? You also get to a certain point where you don't really care about that kind of thing. And I'm at that point. So I'm really happy, despite the windstorm, with what has resulted, in the sense that I'm learning to not take things like wind damage in the garden or bug damage or any kind of damage that you get in the garden, and you will get it one way or another. I'm learning not to take it too personally or seriously. Instead, I see it as just reality, and you know, it's gonna happen. It is gonna happen. So I take it more as a challenge. Sometimes, in the case of my tree kale, a bit of a lesson, not to procrastinate. You know, even with that zucchini that fell on the sprouting broccoli, I probably should have seen that coming too, because that zucchini plant was really big and I should have somehow staked it up to keep it from falling on something, or taken it out, because even though it had been producing greatly right up until last week, it did show signs last week of suddenly starting to go south. So I learn as I go with these things, and I hope you can learn something from what I'm going through that will help you. I know I appreciate other videos on YouTube where I've learned so much from. You know, it might be a 30-minute video and I just take one thing away from it, but that thing is really important. Like, for instance, I never knew how to cook okra. I grew it because it was such a lovely plant with such beautiful flowers, and I thought one day I'm going to learn how to cook that so that I actually eat that. How do I get rid of that slime? And then I was watching a video about a month or two ago, and sure enough, right in the middle of the video, there was this one little tip on how to get rid of the slime of okra, and it works. Yeah, that's the Big Blue House Homestead. I think that's the name of the channel. You can check her out. And yeah, that's what I hope. I hope that something I'm showing you either gives you an action point you can use in your garden, or an idea. I love gleaning ideas from all sorts of channels, and that's what I'm about here, sharing, and also just enjoying my garden. I enjoy documenting it and the lessons I learn. So hopefully you now know, if you get a high wind, but it's not really a huge storm or anything, some of your plants, whether they're big and heavy or brand new and little, they might suffer some damage, but that doesn't have to be the end of the story. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't have to depress you. You can do something about it. So if you like this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll know whenever I upload new content, which I'm doing 3 times a week. And also, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. Remember, you can create the life you want. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. What you doing, girls? You're so quiet. Are you being quiet because I'm taping? You can talk. It's okay. Eat your collards. Yeah. Wow, I've never heard you so quiet before. That's more your usual noisy self. Oh, now you're quiet again. You're too busy looking for worms and slugs and snails, huh? Ducks do love the water. Simple pleasures. Is that good, Batman?